The Bloor Street Viaduct is one of Toronto's great landmarks, a truss-arch bridge spanning almost 500 meters, and it was instrumental in the rapid development of eastern Toronto. But who built it? This is the question that Michael Ondaatje asked himself before writing In the Skin of a Lion, and what we'll be looking at today. This is my first official video where I record my mission to read 52 books in 2025. This will be number 15. I know it's not number 1, but it's a late start, alright? Whatever. I'm doing this because BookTube has ruined my brain, and I noticed that I've been blasting through as many books as I could without thinking about them. So this is to help me slow down and actually think about things. Alright, on to the video. As always, this is part book review, part close reading, so there will be spoilers. I also draw on a great paper by Rachel Bauer, which I've linked in the description. Michael Ondaatje is a Sri Lankan-born Canadian writer and the first Canadian to win the Booker Prize. If you ask your dad to describe canlit, he'll name drop Alice Munro, Margaret Atwood, and Ondaatje. He's one of the big names in canlit. In the Skin of a Lion was his second novel, and I think it's one of his best. If you search for the history of the viaduct, you'll find names like the architect Edmund Burke or the engineer Thomas Taylor, which is a great name by the way, but not the people who actually built the bridge. Ondaatje searched through the City of Toronto archives, trying to learn more about the laborers. When he couldn't find them in the official records, he turned to old audio tapes and transcripts of the Multicultural History Society of Ontario. The absence of working-class immigrant stories is the gap that the novel emerges from. It follows Patrick Lewis, a withdrawn man who's been taught early in life that the world is shaped by what goes unsaid as much as it is by what is said. At first, Patrick's literally a searcher, hired to find the vanished millionaire Ambrose Small. But as he connects with different people in the city, he begins to search for something deeper, for meaning, for connection, and truth in a city teeming with untold stories and invisible labor. In the Skin of a Lion is concerned fundamentally with histories, how they're recorded and transmitted, and how they're interpreted. The narrative's fragmented and told in little pockets the same way that real histories are. On top of that, it's just a gorgeous novel about the exploration of hidden worlds. As Patrick becomes involved with working-class Toronto immigrants, he's drawn into lives he never could have imagined. He meets Alice Gull, a revolutionary and an actress, and his lover, and Nicholas Temelkov, a Macedonian bridge worker who saved Alice from falling off the viaduct. That was years before any of them met. Patrick comes to understand that the city wants to erase the very people who have built it. Ondaatje emphasizes storytelling as a way to reclaim these erased voices. He tells stories through the oral tradition, through theater, and through letter writing. And by experiencing these different forms of expression, Patrick becomes a radical archive of immigrant labor, love, and loss. Scholars like Rachel Bauer help us to understand how these narrative strategies don't just disrupt official histories, they actively create new ways of knowing, imagining, and connecting. They act as supplementary histories rather than alternative ones. In the Skin of a Lion insists that history isn't written by institutions alone, but also by the individual. Let's start talking about letters. Traditional historiography often sees letter writing as too subjective, but Bauer argues that Ondaatje flips this. She writes that every reading of a letter is a secret of the past in the novel. Letters in this novel, then, are never just private, they're archival. They function as political and emotional dispatches across time. Alice's posthumous letter to Patrick, for instance, is a personal message and a political calling at the same time. It insists on witnessing as a call to action. By accepting this call, Patrick evolves into a listener and a vessel, and this mirrors what the novel asks of the reader too, to witness, to carry, to respond. The novel culminates in Patrick's quiet caretaking of Hannah. In that relationship, Patrick steps into the role of witness, someone who preserves the stories of those who might otherwise be forgotten. Also, Alice reads from Joseph Conrad's letters voraciously. They allow Alice to sort of contain Conrad. She's even got one of his lines memorized. The sky in all its zones is mortal. Let me now re-emphasize the extreme looseness of the structures of all objects. These letters are fragments of an erased life, but the language is still unforgettable. Like, I didn't even have to look that quote up. I just wrote it down. And it captures the novel's central concern that even the most stable structures like bridges are built on a framework that's always in flux, made of fallible and poorly described individuals. Anything can be reshaped by zooming in. When Patrick tells Alice in the same scene that the problem with ideology, Alice, is that it hates the private, this becomes key to the novel's own ideology. Ondaatje is acutely aware of how official histories, often shaped by systemic forces, erase the individual. An ideology thrives on abstraction. This is why Patrick tells Alice that she must make it personal. By preserving personal fragments, stories become a force of quiet archival, and the act of storytelling becomes nuanced praxis. And also, just like as a side note, I also like how it's Patrick who brings this up. We really get to see how he's been thinking about the world. Alice's obsession with letters, then, isn't just sentimental, it's political. It asserts that private lives matter, and that the margins hold meaning. The novel is similarly concerned with oral narratives. Take Nicholas Temmelkoff, a Macedonian laborer who catches a fallen nun, who's later revealed to be Alice, off the viaduct in the early pages of the novel. Patrick can't find any information about that night anywhere. It's only when he shows Nicholas a photograph that Nicholas is able to remember. And then, as Ondaatje writes, he has been sewn into history. Now he will begin to tell stories. The fact that this story couldn't be shared through institutional archives or other official channels, but has to be instead shown from personal accounts, is similar to the way Ondaatje couldn't uncover any of the information he was interested in from the official histories of the bridge construction. And the third mode here of historiography is performance. Alice stages plays in a small immigrant theater, dramatizing the lives and struggles of marginalized workers. These performances are overtly political, giving voice to the oppressed. Theater becomes a space where the working class can see themselves represented as historical figures. Ondaatje uses these moments of performance to show how collective memory can be built through participation and connection, not through records. Patrick interrupts one of Alice's plays by coming on stage at the most intense moment when an immigrant's being attacked. What's interesting here is that Alice admits the interruption is part of the performance. She says, "Somebody always comes out of the audience to stop me, Patrick." And so theater becomes a communal form of storytelling and an archive of labor and identity. It also demonstrates how the personal interrupts the structural. Ondaatje does this a lot in the novel. He develops mundane things into powerful archives that are, in a way, more reliable than official archives. Letters are archives of personal lives that are treated reverently. The theater is transformed into an archive of labor and identity, and conversations are seen as rituals. It seems to me that these are the three principal means by which Ondaatje thinks we can make ideology personal. Let me go back to that one quote that Alice said from Conrad's letters. "The sky in all its zones is mortal." Let me now re-emphasize the extreme looseness of the structure of all objects. This is representative of everything we've talked about. The sky, this vast, untouchable, unchangeable thing, becomes a stand-in for history. But for Ondaatje, it's permeable, and crucially, it can be changed by one person. Everybody is capable of changing history, and everybody does. That's why Alice says somebody always interrupts her play. The interruption is the play. The true structure of history isn't some rigid brick of cause and effect. It's a porous set of stories constantly in flux. The viaduct is still standing, and that's thanks to everyone who looks after it. Thanks for watching. If you got anything out of this video, consider liking and subscribing. Every image of this viaduct in this video is from the Toronto Public Library Digital Archives. And I'll see you next week for another one.